Over the past few years, life for many of us has changed in ways we could not have foreseen or imagined. COVID came along and created changes in how we lived our lives from every aspect, from our social lives, how we worked, taught, and even how we grieved for our lost loved ones. Grief at any time is difficult. However, the last few years has made it so much more complicated for many people. At the heart of the worldwide lockdowns, unfortunately, many people became grief-stricken at the loss of a loved one. For many people, COVID changed us, our homes, and our families. Firstly, there is the collective grief felt around the world at such massive changes and huge losses of loved ones during the height of the pandemic. There cannot be a discussion around this issue without mentioning people who had a different point of view when it came to the pandemic and how COVID was handled by individuals, the government, and the world. As lockdowns occurred, people dealt with a great deal of uncertainty, fear, and change. All of the restrictions and isolation certainly put a toll on many people. There were job losses, school and education put on hold. Many people had important celebrations they were unable to commemorate. Such huge changes bring about a grieving process for many people. Grief is not only about the end of life, it is also about deep changes, losses, and deep sorrow. The process of grieving for life as we know it during the pandemic and the lockdowns was done behind doors, on an individual level, as people felt isolated. Many people said they felt silly or unreasonable to feel such grief when others were grieving what they felt was so much more. But grief does not have a level of loss attached. The fact that you lost your job during the pandemic or you were unable to celebrate the 21st birthday of your daughter are all causes for grief. Grief on such levels can be difficult to work through because of these feelings, of our circumstances not being as bad as another's, or that someone else has it worse. This does not mean that your level of grief is insignificant. It is very significant and should be acknowledged and worked through as an important journey. The simple act of acknowledging this circumstance to yourself and accepting your feelings around such a subject can have great healing strength. No matter what your beliefs may be, or even if they have changed throughout time, there is no denying that COVID has certainly changed the world, our society, and as individuals. And for individuals who have lost their loved ones during the time of lockdowns, especially, grief was difficult and made even more so by the restrictions in place at the time. Usually in our society, after a loved one has passed, we commemorate them in our own special way. In many cases, this includes a funeral for saying goodbye, for connecting with others who loved and cared for the person who passed, for a communal outletting of grief, and this is a major step for the grieving process. During COVID restrictions and lockdowns, many people did not get to have this ritual goodbye, and it can leave loved ones with no sense of closure, no communal grief, and can leave you feeling stuck in grief. It is so very important to still grieve for your loved one. If you can, have a special ritual or ceremony of your own to say goodbye to your loved one, then do so. Create your own ritual with all that you held so dear and celebrate the life of your loved one. For many people, once some kind of restrictions were lifted, then memorials or funerals were able to continue, but usually only for a small number of people. This left some feeling left out and unable to be involved and heal within that communal grief that a funeral assists us with. For some, the streaming of a funeral helped a great deal, and this helped to include many people to celebrate the lives of those we lost. The grieving process is very difficult and encompassing, especially in these times of stress and the unknown. Please reach out and get help if you need it. Help is always there. Unfortunately for some people, part of that grieving process is in not getting to say goodbye to a loved one before they passed. Saying goodbye is both incredibly difficult and deeply rewarding. During the times of lockdowns and restrictions, many people did not get the opportunity to say goodbye before a loved one passed. This lack of a last goodbye can leave you feeling resentful, hurt, frustrated, and even angry. These are all completely normal. For some people, it feels like the last moments were taken away, snatched from us. For some, there is a deep anger in the fact that if our loved one was already passing, then what did COVID matter? Sadly, when we don't get to say goodbye because we feel the choice was taken from our hands, it can leave us concentrating on that instead of allowing our grieving journey and our celebration of our loved one. There is no going back. If you didn't get to say goodbye, there are a few things you can do to help yourself with this journey. Some of these things do depend on your spiritual and religious beliefs. If you are spiritual, then you could pray and say your goodbyes, or you could do a ritual to say farewell. If you believe that your loved one can hear you and know your heart, then say goodbye to them and release the negative feelings that come with not being able to say goodbye. Many people find it comforting to write them a letter and say goodbye and anything that may be on their minds. Most importantly, know that you did the best you could with such difficult circumstances and you could not have done anything different. Also know that your loved one also knows this. Grief is a journey, and for many people, part of that journey includes being able to get together with loved ones and talk about their deceased family, friend, or loved one. In lockdown, there was a great deal of social isolation, and this connection was lost for a great deal of people. For some, this meant that their grieving journey felt stagnated and stalled. This is completely normal. Now we are removing the majority of restrictions and people begin to socialize again. Know that it is completely okay to continue on your journey of grieving and talk about your loss. Give yourself the gift of being able to connect with your loss and the loss of others. Grief is also about change and loss, and during the times of COVID and restrictions, many people grieved many different aspects of their lives that they possibly did not consider before the lockdowns. An example of this is how many people lost their jobs, and this created great financial hardship. In this instance, people were struggling with basics and financial security, along with the lifestyle their job had afforded them. These are huge changes, very stressful, and on a material level may take a long time to get back to where they once were. Grief may seem like a strange word to use when using this example, but grief is about loss, change, and sorrow. And these are exactly the emotions that were prevalent in this instant. But while you were fighting for basic needs, your emotional needs may go by the wayside. And this is where outside help can be very useful. And if you do need help, reach out. There is a great deal of help available to you. No matter what your beliefs are surrounding the pandemic and COVID, there is no doubt that it has had an impact on everyone's life. Some people made huge decisions during this time and changed the way they live, their career, their social life, and study. As we now come out of restrictions, it still may be difficult for some people in our society to travel or to go to certain places and see certain people. But remember, as we have seen over the past few years, this too will change. On a societal level, please remember that everyone was affected to some degree over the last few years, some more than others. And being understanding to where others are on their own journey can help us to be kind, helpful, and understanding to others and ourselves. Thank you for reading and joining me, and blessed be to you all.